3 true pipe repair crew horror stories. Hey everybody, I'm glad y'all stopped by. Most people never think about what lies beneath their feet. Water mains, sewer lines, storm drains, miles and miles of underground pipe, quietly doing their job. Until something breaks. Then, a pipe repair crew gets called. They arrive with excavators, pipe cameras, shovels, vac trucks, concrete saws, and before the day is over, the street looks exactly like it never happened. It's honest work, dirty work, and usually pretty uneventful. But every now and then, a crew uncovers something that was never supposed to be found. Or they see something that can't possibly be explained. Tonight, I've gathered 3 terrifying encounters involving pipe repair crews. A sewer camera that somehow entered a house, voices coming from a bathroom drain after midnight, and a repair that turned into a 6-foot-deep rectangle. For reasons no one on the crew could explain. Whether these stories are true, I'll let y'all decide. Story 1. The pipe camera came into my house. I spent nearly 10 years working for a municipal utility department in Kentucky. Our crew handled broken water mains, collapsed sewer lines, emergency leaks, and camera inspections. If it was buried underground, we were usually the ones fixing it. Most people have never seen a sewer inspection camera. It's basically a steel cylinder, about the size of a soda can, with a high-definition camera surrounded by bright LED lights. It's attached to hundreds of feet of fiberglass cable, and every inch it travels appears on a monitor inside the inspection truck. It's one of the best tools we have. Tree roots, broken joints, collapsed pipes, illegal connections. The camera finds everything. One Tuesday morning, we got a call from a homeowner who'd been dealing with sewage backups for almost a month. 3 different plumbers had already looked at it. Nobody could find the problem. The city wanted us to inspect the sewer lateral before approving a street excavation. It sounded routine. We parked the camera truck along the curb, set out cones, opened the cleanout near the sidewalk, and fed the camera into the line. Inside the truck, I sat at the controls while my partner Rick fed the cable outside. The monitor showed exactly what we expected. Clean PVC, a little standing water, a few tiny root intrusions. Nothing serious. 30 feet, 40, 50. Everything looked normal. Then, the pipe changed. The white PVC disappeared. In its place, old clay tile. Rick leaned into the truck. That shouldn't be there. I nodded. According to the city's utility maps, this neighborhood had been completely replaced with PVC nearly 30 years earlier. There shouldn't have been a single clay pipe left. I rotated the camera. The joints looked ancient, uneven, almost handmade. Rick scratched his head. Keep pushing. The camera continued forward 60 feet, 70, then something happened that neither of us had ever seen before. The pipe started climbing, not gradually, noticeably. I looked back at the monitor. Gravity sewer lines don't run uphill. They physically can't. Rick looked at the locator in his hand, then back at me. The signal's moving, but not toward the main. I pulled up the city's utility map. My stomach tightened. The camera wasn't heading toward the sewer main under the street. It was traveling back toward the neighborhood, except not the house we'd been called to inspect. It was headed toward the abandoned house next door, the one everyone on the block said had been empty. For nearly 20 years. Rick stared at the screen. You ever seen anything like this? I slowly shook my head. No. Then he quietly said, Don't lose the signal. I eased the camera forward. The clay pipe continued another 15 feet. Then it ended. The camera emerged into open air. I expected to see dirt, maybe a collapsed crawl space. Instead, the monitor showed a room, hardwood floors, floral wallpaper, an antique rocking chair, a grandfather clock standing against the wall. There wasn't any dust. No cobwebs, nothing. It looked lived in, Rick whispered. How the hell? Before he could finish, the rocking chair moved very slowly, forward then back. No breeze, no sound, just one gentle rock. I reached for the controls to reverse the camera. That's when Someone stepped into view, bare feet, stopping only inches from the lens. The feet didn't move. They just stood there, pale, bare, perfectly still. Neither Rick nor I said a word. I slowly rotated the camera upward. An elderly woman stood over the lens. She wore a faded blue nightgown. Her gray hair hung just below her shoulders. One hand rested against the wall. The other hung motionless at her side. She wasn't blinking. She wasn't breathing. She simply stared directly into the camera. Rick finally whispered, "Reverse it." I reached for the controls. Before I could move the camera, the woman slowly crouched down. Her face filled the monitor. Every wrinkle, every strand of hair, every tiny reflection in her eyes. She leaned so close I thought she'd touched the lens. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile someone gives when they've been expecting you. My hand finally found the joystick. I pulled it backward. Nothing. The camera wouldn't move. I tried again. Still nothing. Rick looked toward the cable outside. It isn't snagged. I pushed harder. The fiberglass rod bent. The camera still refused to come back. Then, the monitor flickered, just once. When the picture returned, the woman was gone. The room was empty, except the rocking chair was still moving. Forward, back, without warning. The camera shot backward, so fast, the cable whipped through Rick's gloves. He nearly lost his grip. What the? The camera raced through the clay pipe, back through the PVC, out of the cleanout, and slammed into the inspection truck hard enough to crack the protective housing. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, Rick looked at the footage. "Play it back." I rewound the recording. The clay pipe was there. The room was there. The rocking chair was there. But the woman wasn't. Not in a single frame. It looked like we'd been staring into an empty room the entire time. Rick rubbed the back of his neck. "We both saw her?" "I know." He looked back toward the abandoned house. "You know what? I don't think that pipe goes where we think it does." About that time, the homeowner walked outside. She smiled. "Did y'all find the blockage?" Rick hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Who lives next door?" Her smile disappeared. "Nobody. That house has been condemned since 2004. What happened?" She looked toward the old house, then quietly answered, "And by herself." One day, she simply disappeared. They searched the house, the yard, the neighborhood. They never found her. Rick pointed toward the house. "Did it have a basement?" She frowned. "No. It was built on a slab." Neither of us said anything, because we both knew there was no basement, no crawl space, and absolutely no way for a sewer pipe to rise into a furnished room. As we packed the truck, Rick quietly walked over to me. "You notice something?" "What?" "The grandfather clock. I didn't hear it ticking." "No, it wasn't the clock," he swallowed. "When we first saw the room, it read 10:14. I nodded. "So?" He pointed toward the monitor. "When we played the recording back, it still read 10:14. The inspection had lasted almost 15 minutes. The clock had never moved. What stands out to me today is that smile. It's amusing how a single event can have such a profound impact on everything. At our other inspection jobs, I always assumed that I might encounter another unusual occurrence, like a PVC pipe transforming into clay. However, it never happened. I can still vividly recall Rick exclaiming, "How the hell?" I often wonder if that was the appropriate question to ask. Should we have instead inquired, "Why were we chosen to witness this?" As for the sewage inspection camera, we never used it again. We simply zeroed it out in our inventory. It simply didn't feel right after what had transpired. Interestingly, this incident did not make it into our report. Do you think we were in the wrong? Later that evening, Rick and I agreed that there are certain things that are simply better left alone. Sometimes, the strangest thing a pipe camera finds isn't a broken sewer line. It's a place that shouldn't exist. Our next story begins with a family who started hearing voices. coming from their bathroom drain. At first, they thought it was just the plumbing, until a pipe repair crew explained they were repairing a broken water main. At County Cemetery East, the first few nights, the family assumed it was just the plumbing. Old houses make strange noises, pipes expand, water hammers, air gets trapped in the lines. Anybody who's owned an older home knows that, but this was different. Story 2, I heard talking in my drain. My name's Eric. I've been repairing water and sewer mains for the county for almost 15 years. Most emergency calls happen after a major freeze. Water trapped inside old cast iron mains expands. The pipe splits, and by morning, you've got thousands of gallons flooding the street. 3 winters ago, a hard freeze hit our county. Temperatures dropped into the teens for almost 2 straight days. By the time things thawed, water mains were bursting everywhere. Schools, neighborhoods, businesses, even the cemetery. Our crew had been assigned to County Cemetery East, an old cemetery on the edge of town with water lines dating back to the 1950s. The main feeding the irrigation system had split beneath one of the oldest sections. We'd already been working there for 4 days. Every morning, just after sunrise. Every evening, we packed up before dark. Nobody questioned it. That was simply what our foreman insisted on. Around lunchtime on the 5th day, dispatch transferred us a service call. A homeowner living about half a mile from the cemetery wanted someone to inspect strange noises coming from their plumbing. Normally, that would have been handled by another department, but everyone else was buried with freeze repairs, so we took it. When we arrived, a woman in her early 60s met us at the front door. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Before we could introduce ourselves, she asked, "Do y'all hear them too?" Our foreman looked confused. "Hear who?" She pointed toward the hallway. "The people." Talking, we exchanged glances. The foreman gave a polite smile. "Ma'am, can you show us?" She led us to the guest bathroom, the sink, the toilet, the bathtub. Everything looked perfectly normal. Then she closed the door. The room became quiet, almost too quiet. She pointed toward the bathtub drain. "Listen." For several seconds, nothing. One of the guys shrugged. "I don't hear." Then a voice, faint, muffled, almost impossible to understand. It sounded like someone speaking through a concrete wall. Another voice answered. Then another. There were at least 3 people, maybe more, talking somewhere deep below us. One of the younger guys laughed nervously. "Must be workers in another neighborhood." The homeowner slowly shook her head. "It only happens after sunset." My foreman knelt beside the tub, removed the drain cover, and listened. His face changed almost immediately. He didn't say anything. He just kept listening. Then, very quietly, he asked the homeowner one question. "How long has this been happening?" She looked at the floor. "Ever since y'all started digging at County Cemetery East." The bathroom went silent. Every member of our crew looked at the foreman. Because there was one thing the homeowner couldn't possibly know. Nobody outside the county knew exactly where we were working. The repair location had never been released. The foreman stood up slowly. He looked at every one of us. Then, he quietly said, "Let's check the meter." I knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't checking the meter. He was getting us out of that bathroom. Once we stepped outside, he waited until the homeowner closed the front door. Then he looked at us. "Did y'all hear it?" Nobody answered. Finally, one of the younger guys nodded. "I thought it was people underground." The foreman slowly shook his head. "There aren't any utility tunnels around here." I asked him, "What were they saying?" He looked at me. "You heard it too." I nodded. I couldn't make out all of it. But I heard, "Lower him." Another guy immediately interrupted. "I heard, 'Move the stone.'" We all turned toward him. "You heard that too?" He nodded. I thought I was imagining it. The foreman didn't say anything for several seconds. Then he quietly admitted, I heard, dig faster. None of us laughed. Not one. Because we'd all heard different voices, saying different things. Almost like they weren't talking to us. They were talking to each other. The foreman walked back to his truck, grabbed the radio, and called dispatch. I need to know something. Has anyone else been assigned to County Cemetery East? A few moments later, dispatch answered. Negative. Only your crew. What about contractors? Negative. Any emergency crews working after hours? Another pause. Negative. The foreman thanked them and hung up. He never told us what he was thinking. Instead, he looked back toward the cemetery. We're finishing today. And we're not coming back tomorrow. One of the guys frowned. We're almost done. I know, but the county can send somebody else. That evening, we packed a trench, loaded the excavator, and left before sunset. The next morning, the county called. The water main had started leaking again. A different crew was assigned. Around 9 that morning, one of their operators called our foreman. His first question was, Why didn't you tell us? Our foreman frowned. Tell you what? The voices. Silence. Then the operator continued. My laborer thought people were trapped underground. We shut everything down. We started looking. What'd you find? Another long silence, finally. Nothing. But we weren't the only ones hearing them. The foreman leaned forward. What do you mean? The operator swallowed. The cemetery groundskeeper walked over. He asked us, Can y'all hear them too? My foreman's face went pale. What did you tell him? We said yes. The operator took a deep breath. The groundskeeper just nodded. Then he said, They've been talking. Every night, since the freeze. What are they saying? My foreman asked. The operator's voice became almost a whisper. They aren't saying the same thing anymore. What are they saying now? Another long pause. Then they keep repeating one sentence, over and over and over again. The foreman tightened his grip on the phone. What sentence? The operator answered, We're almost through. He immediately hung up. Later, a crew fixed the broken pipe in the county cemetery east after they found the issue. The pipe was split in an older section of the cemetery where the graves were more closely packed. They swiftly fixed and finished the job. They simply removed the old pipe and installed a new one. It may not have been the most cost-effective option, but it was undoubtedly the quickest, saving them valuable days. Once the pipe was sealed, the incessant voices ceased. Later, a paranormalologist, at least that's what I called him, explained that it was a conductor, a conduit, and a means of communication. He likened it to the old cup on a string or the kids' telephone game, emphasizing that this was the case. He believed that the broken pipe allowed the deceased to communicate, and they utilized it while they had the opportunity. However, when the conduit was closed, communication ceased. Sometimes the sounds you hear inside old pipes aren't echoes, they aren't water, and they aren't your imagination. Our final story begins with what should have been a routine water main repair. The utility locates were perfect. The excavation permit was approved. Everything made sense until the foreman ordered the operator to keep digging, long after they'd already reached the pipe. Most excavation jobs follow the same routine. The utility companies come out first. They mark every underground line with colored paint. Blue for water, green for sewer, yellow for gas, orange for communications. The excavator operator follows the marks. The laborers expose the pipe by hand. The repair gets made, the hole gets filled. Simple, until one dig made absolutely no sense. Story 3. The dig doesn't make sense. I operated an excavator for a pipe repair contractor in northern Missouri. By the time this happened, I'd dug hundreds of emergency repairs, broken water mains, collapsed sewer laterals, storm drains. If somebody handed me a locat ticket, I could usually tell you exactly what the repair would look like before we even unloaded the equipment. One Thursday morning, we received a work order for a leaking 6-inch water main beneath an older neighborhood. Nothing unusual. The utility locates had already been completed. Bright blue paint stretched across the street. Blue flags marked both sides of the easement. Everything looked textbook. When we arrived, the superintendent was already waiting. I'd never met him before. Our regular superintendent had apparently called in sick. This guy introduced himself as Daniel, mid-50s. Tall, spotless reflective vest, brand new hard hat. The strange part, his boots. Every one of us was standing ankle-deep in mud. His boots looked like they'd just come out of the box. Not a single speck of dirt. He gathered us together. The locate is correct. Dig here. He pointed directly at the blue paint. How deep? I asked. 6 feet, I frowned. The water main should only be about 3. I know. Dig 6. I shrugged. Sometimes utility depths vary. I climbed into the excavator. The first bucket peeled away fresh asphalt. The second exposed packed clay. By 3 feet, we should have found the pipe. Nothing, no warning tape, no bedding sand, no water line. Daniel never looked surprised. Keep going. 4 feet, still nothing. 5 feet, nothing. One of the laborers finally spoke up. You sure this is the right spot? Daniel never took his eyes off the hole. Keep digging. At exactly 6 feet. I stopped the machine. The excavation was almost perfectly square. One of the younger guys laughed nervously. This thing looks more like a grave than a pipe repair. Nobody laughed with him, because he was right. The hole wasn't just 6 feet deep. It was almost exactly 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. Perfectly rectangular. I leaned out of the cab. There's no pipe, Daniel quietly answered. I know. The entire crew stared at him. One laborer frowned. Then, what are we digging for? For the first time all morning, Daniel smiled. Not at us, at the hole. Then he quietly said, it should be right about there. He pointed toward the center of the excavation. At that exact moment, my bucket struck something. It wasn't metal. It wasn't concrete. It sounded like wood. The entire crew froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. I slowly lowered the excavator bucket again. Thump. Definitely wood. Not plywood, not a pallet. Something solid. Old. The laborer climbed into the excavation with a shovel. He carefully scraped away the dirt. Within seconds, a weathered wooden corner appeared. Dark. Water-stained. He looked up at Daniel. Boss, I think it's a box, Daniel calmly replied. I know. Every one of us looked at him. You knew. He nodded. Keep uncovering it. None of us wanted to, but he was the superintendent. So we kept digging. Within 15 minutes, the entire object was exposed. It wasn't a utility vault. It wasn't an old crate. It was a coffin, a real wooden coffin. No cemetery, no church, just the middle of a residential neighborhood. One of the guys climbed out of the hole. I'm calling the police. Daniel grabbed his arm. No! The laborer pulled away. The hell you mean no? Daniel never raised his voice. Cover it back up. Complete silence. I climbed out of the excavator. We've got a coffin in the middle of a water main repair. We're not burying it again. Daniel slowly turned toward me. There isn't a water main. I frowned. What? There never was. I looked toward the blue utility markings, the blue paint, the flags, everything. Daniel quietly said, I put them there. Every one of us stared at him. You what? There was never a locate request. There was never a leak. There was never a work order. One of the laborers reached for his phone. I'm calling dispatch. He dialed, placed the call on speaker. County Utilities. The laborer gave them the ticket number. The dispatcher paused, then answered, We don't have a ticket with that number. He gave them the address. Another pause. We've never had a repair scheduled there. The laborer's face turned white. We've got 6 guys here. An excavator. 2 dump trucks. And a superintendent. Dispatch replied. Who is your superintendent? All of us slowly turned toward Daniel. He was gone. Not walking away. Not climbing into a truck. Gone. As if he'd never been standing there, we searched the street, the yards, the trucks. Nothing. The police arrived 20 minutes later. The first thing they asked was, "Who authorized this excavation?" Nobody could answer. The officer looked at our paperwork, then looked back at us. "This permit is 38 years old." Our foreman frowned. "That's impossible." The date was faded, but still readable. The address matched perfectly. The officer climbed into the excavation, brushed dirt from the top of the coffin. There was a brass nameplate. Everyone leaned forward. The officer wiped away the last of the mud, then stopped. Very quietly, he asked, "Who's Daniel?" None of us answered. He looked back at us. "Because that's the name on the coffin." The county eventually determined no water main had ever existed beneath that street. The blue paint washed away after the next rain. No utility company ever admitted placing the locate flags, and the permit simply disappeared from evidence. To this day, I still don't know who sent us there, or why, but I do know one thing. Every time I drive past that neighborhood, there's fresh grass where we dug. No depression, no patch, no sign anyone was ever there. As if the ground healed itself, and whatever was buried beneath it wanted to stay forgotten. I can still vividly recall Daniel's face, particularly the expression on it. That haunting memory has lingered with me until this very day. Why did Daniel want to dig? Was it to escape or return, or did it truly happen as we perceive it, or was it merely a coincidence? I consider myself quite rational, but this was an unprecedented level of disorientation. When I reflect on it, I try to remain composed. I mentioned earlier the ground healed itself. We didn't cover the hole and never found anything as to who did. I will leave you with one last thing that we found odd. Over the next few days, we started losing items in the shop. We don't know if it is related or not. Maybe Daniel didn't run off too far. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, let me know which one disturbed you the most. E-pipe camera came into my house. Heard talking in my drain. The dig doesn't make sense. Have you ever experienced something strange involving plumbing, construction, excavation, or utility work? I'd love to read your stories in the comments. Who knows? Your experience might inspire a future episode of Stories That Scare. Keep the fires burning, and as always, I'll tell the stories if you'll stay scared.